Kia ora koutou, buon pomeriggio a tutte e tutti. My name is Giulio Valentino Dalla Riva and I'm a senior lecturer in data science at the University of Canterbury. I would have loved to be there with you today, but unfortunately I could not. I chose for today a quite ambitious and maybe paradoxical title, what we don't talk about when we talk about AI ethics. It's ambitious on one end because I do not know everything you talk about, and I don't even know what you talk about just today. And it's a paradoxical title because if we are going to talk about it now, it's not true that we don't talk about it. So a more earnest title would have been something along the line of the kind of dialogue I would like to see more central when we talk about ethics. I started teaching ethics and having dialogues about these topics with data and computational scientists, as well as AI practitioner in 2016. I was in Canada at the moment, and for some reason I started taking on me this mission. Since then, the focus on ethical and societal impact of AI in data science has exploded. And I use exploded almost literally. Google, for example, has gone from discovering an interest in AI ethics and hiring the first members of their AI team to firing two of their most renowned ethicists, Dr. Timothy Gabriel and Professor Melanie Mitchell, as well as losing one of their research directors, Sammy Benjo. And all of these happened possibly to prevent the publication of a paper on the ethical impacts of large natural language models. So I don't think that rambling on about how important ethics is necessary. We know it, and we probably are all interested about it. In the meanwhile, we academics tried to maintain our public relevance in the dialogue about ethics and all that corpus of disciplines and practice that include machine learning, AI, big data, data science, and so on. However, did we manage to remain relevant in the public dialogue? My impression, and it's a very personal impression, is that the voice of our community of practice is not loud, and it may not even be hearable at all in New Zealand today. So in this talk, I will try to give you my opinion why that is the case, as well as trying to counter what is a overly negative assessment of the situation with some positive examples of where we may go from here. So my opinion is that we do not talk about AI ethics in the way that the people out there, that the communities in which we live in, would like us to talk about it. And there is a couple of evidences that I can bring for you that try to make that point. One is a 2020 paper by Su Lim Blogjet, Solon Barokas, Hal Daume III, and Hannah Wallach, Language Technology is Power, a critical survey of bias in natural language processing. What they do in that paper is taking, for example, the case of natural language processing. They look at 146 papers that analyze bias in these systems, and they found that almost none of them frame bias in a deep and enough wide manner. People fail to provide reasons why bias should be considered as an important component in language systems. And people fail to put that in relation to other forms of bias and all the wide existing literature about social injustice and bias. So on one end, one of the first things that especially people like me, I'm a mathematician by background, tend to do is talking about bias in a very technical way. We tend to talk about ethics and we try to believe that ethics should be solved with a technological fix. And we keep talking about this between ourselves. It's like in a Mexican movie named Los Parecidos, where everybody starts to be exactly the same. It is something that we have selected our own community because we like certain things, and exactly for that reason it is hard to introduce in our dialogues elements that are external to our way of thinking. The other big limitation that we have when we talk about AI ethics is that we talk about it. And when we talk about it, especially as academics, and I feel that extremely powerful in this moment because I'm talking to my computer screen, not even having a true audience in front of me. We talk about things without listening. There is very little work done in our community that tries to break that wall between the academia and the outside. And that is a pity because there is a lot of opportunities to talk about AI ethics in New Zealand right now if we had the courage of engaging with people outside academia. And there is another way of doing all of this, and it's going through dialogue. We should try hard to frame the ethical impacts and the investigation of the ethical impacts of our practices not as a one-sided discovery process where we sit in our couches, in our offices, and try to figure out fault experiments and counterfactual worlds where we imagine strange things about omniscient AIs and things like this, but we should actually try as much as possible to enter in dialogue with the people that are most impacted by our research. And that is a concept of AI, that is a understanding of AI, which is present, for example, and presented very well in a recent paper by Abeba Birane and Fred Cummins called Algorithmic Injustice Toward a Relational Ethics, where in much better words than the one that I'm choosing now, they make the point that ethics is a relational enterprise. Ethics is entering in dialogue with people out there, and we cannot do that without talking with our communities. So how do we go about doing it is again presented with one nice word by Solon Barocas when it forces us to interrogate how does our big data, data science, and AI shift the power? Do our practices shift the power toward those institutions and those people that are already powerful, or are we using our research to empower otherwise marginalized communities? And that is something that we should be asking in this moment in New Zealand, in the moment where the New Zealand police is adopting facial recognition software, while in a lot of other cities around the world, those same technologies are being banned. Or it is something that we should ask in this moment in New Zealand, in the moment where there is increased interest about detecting terrorism online and detecting hate speech online using machine learning techniques, in a moment where we have very little work done to understand natural languages which are not standard English. And in this context, the work done by background five data science and Te Hiku trying to develop natural language tools for natural language processing tools for Te Reo Maori is a wonderful example of a positive and very needed use of our AI. So this is the kind of dialogue I would like to have, and these are the kind of questions that I will pose you if I were there. And I hope to spark a little bit the conversation and maybe bring this conversation on in the future with you. Thank you so much.